Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Episode 54, When Love Is Not Enough. War Baby here with another episode of Murderous Minors. A mother's love is the one thing children crave and actually need to flourish and blossom to their highest potential. So it's especially shocking when a mother is slain by their own child. What could possibly drive a seemingly ordinary teen to snuff out the life of their primary caregiver and formative nurturer? On this episode of Murderous Minors, we cover 2 cases of boys whose pals became accomplices, along with a case of motherly murder that will honestly leave you wondering, is love enough?
The little boy that I knew from a young age was brought up in a loving home with loving parents, and he's not the monster they're saying he is.
Have you ever known anyone who was frightened of their child? Classmates of Kimberly Hutchins Mironovas recalled that she had told them she was scared of her 15-year-old son Lukas while attending the Aveda Institute for Cosmetology in Litchfield, Maine. In September of 2017, Kimberly sold her condo on Mountain Gate Lane in Ashland, Massachusetts, and moved with Lukas to change her career and start a new chapter in their lives. Kimberly, originally from Rumford, Maine, was a self-taught piano player and talented interior designer with a degree from Becker College. Lukas's parents had divorced back in 2008, and he spent his childhood spending weekends with his father, a devoted parent who dutifully kept up with his parental and financial obligations. Following their move from Ashland, Lukas continued to visit frequently and was seen there on April 15, 2018, reportedly chatting normally and happily with boyhood friends. 15-year-old William Smith and 13-year-old Thomas T.J. Severance still hung around with Lukas, even heading to Maine to spend time with him. On April 22, 2018, Kimberly was at Aveda Institute cutting hair for walk-in customers when others noticed she was visibly shaken by a phone call. Her 15-year-old son Lukas had set an illegal bonfire on their property and she had to leave. Kimberly had previously disclosed to others at the school that her son had anger issues and engaged in threatening behavior. She mentioned he stole money and purposely broke his laptop. They said she seemed scared when she talked about him, which wasn't even that often. Their own family members would later say that Lukas had issues with mental health since early childhood and was on the autism spectrum. Kimberly's mother told Oxygen.com that, quote, "He wasn't a leader, he was a follower. I think that he wanted friends so bad he felt like he was labeled because he did go to special schools. And he just wanted friends so bad that he would do anything to get friends. And I think when those 2 boys led, he followed." Lukas had his friends from Ashland at the house, Will and TJ, whom Kimberly had summoned. After being expelled from his new school, she figured her son could use some companionship. A nice idea, but court records indicate she soon noticed something amiss. Her marijuana stash was gone and she confronted the boys about its whereabouts. Kimberly told them that she wouldn't drive them back to Ashland, a more than 2-hour drive. Apparently, the boys then took the family dog for a walk while they hatched a plan to kill Kimberly. The prosecution would later place a seemingly disproportionate amount of blame on Will, Lukas's friend, a freshman in high school who had lived with his father off of East Bluff Road for years. Court records indicated that in 2005, William's father received emergency custody after the boy's mother overdosed with him there. Things seemed quiet for the pair in the ensuing years. The state alleged that the murder scheme took shape as the boys walked the dog, implicating Smith as the one most angry about losing his ride and possibly their newfound stash of weed. Astonishingly, the young trio first attempted to dissolve Kimberly's own prescription medication in her wine. However, they quickly discovered that this was too obvious to work. Instead, after midnight when his mother was in bed, Lukas put on a mask and a pair of gloves and brought a knife and his friend Will upstairs to her bedroom. Young TJ, a 13-year-old 7th grader, took part in the planning phase but did not participate in her slaughter. The only one with any sense, he stayed downstairs. In what must be a parent's worst nightmare, Kimberly awoke to being strangled, both by her son Lukas and his friend Will in turn. A struggle commenced and they ended up on the bedroom floor. The boys tried cutting off Kimberly's airway with their forearms, but when she failed to perish in sufficient time, Lukas stabbed his mother 2 times in the neck with his hand covering her mouth. As reported by Oxygen.com, the trio then fled the scene in Kimberly's vehicle, not getting very far before they were apprehended. A state trooper noticed them driving on a dirt road with no headlights. After attempting to convince the officer that an intruder had killed Kimberly and they had simply left in fear, they ultimately confessed. The 3 were arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, with first-degree murder charges added for Lukas and Will. Both Lukas and TJ implicated Will as the mastermind, as the one who came up with the idea in the first place. Ultimately, the judge would agree, calling 15-year-old William Smith the, quote, prime mover in the murder plot and sentencing him to 28 years following his guilty plea. In the end, he confessed to encouraging the others to commit the murder and to helping strangle Kimberly. He'll be paroled by the age of 43. The youngest co-conspirator, 13-year-old Thomas Severance, ultimately pleaded no contest in exchange for a plea allowing him to receive a juvenile sentence. He took responsibility for his role in the murder and will be confined to Long Creek Youth Development Center in South Portland, Maine until his 21st birthday. As a juvenile, this was the longest sentence he could receive by law. When TJ's father had been contacted after his arrest for a statement, he explained that he had never met his son, saying, quote, "I haven't seen my son, period. I pay child support and I don't even know what my son looks like." Court records reflect that TJ's mother said she had not spoken to him since she found out she was pregnant. In December 2019, Lukas Mironovas was sentenced to 33 years in prison for the premeditated murder of his 47-year-old mother. Attorneys had provided evidence that Lukas was on the autism spectrum and that he had a history of mental illness, saying, quote, "He needed the education, he needed the mental health, and changing providers and schools all the time did not give him the stability that he needed." However, the state contended that regardless, punishment was still in order, saying, quote, "In a case where their mental health was not in fact the cause of it, there still is the consequence that must be paid." Kimberly's mother and sister prepared a victim impact statement for Lukas's sentencing hearing, saying, quote, "One thing is clear. We love both Kimberly and Lukas with all our heart. He's been part of our lives. You just don't shut something like that off. We've lost 2, really, because he's in prison for 33 years at 15 years old. Lukas was in need of professional medical attention, and the steps my sister had taken revealed she did everything she could as a mother to help her son get well. I knew he had been struggling for years with mental health issues, and our family wanted him to know that despite his condition, he was loved and accepted no matter what. But our love wasn't enough." Since they were tried as adults but were juveniles when they murdered Kimberly, their sentences will be reviewed after 25 years and they could be paroled. If not, Will serve 28 years and Lukas 35. All three will have the opportunity for a redemptive life, which I'm sure all of their mothers want for them, because a mother is a mother forever, no matter how she gets there, right? That's how Denise Hallowell of Inverness, Florida felt, especially since she herself had been adopted as a child. As an adult, she carried on that tradition in order to offer children in need a better chance at life. After adopting one son from Guatemala and son Carlos from Honduras, Denise felt she had the tools required to deal with the emotional issues children of foreign adoptions often endure. She was a teacher and even worked for a time at the Renaissance Center for Citrus County, Florida schools, where she was responsible for the discipline of students with behavioral issues. Her youngest turned out to be more than she was expecting. According to Denise, by the age of 12, he was frequently running away and exhibiting destructive and violent behavior. When she dialed 911 on September 22, 2015, to report him missing for the second time, there was no way she could have predicted how much that call would ultimately cost her. When police found her son hiding in a neighbor's shed, he quickly spilled a story of profound abuse and discipline at home. He was acting as though he had escaped active imprisonment. According to the police affidavit, Denise's youngest son described a barren bedroom with only an air mattress, a bucket for a bathroom, and a lock on the outside of the door. The windows were nailed shut. Upon visiting the residence, police corroborated these statements, even seeing the older brother Carlos's room, complete with bed, computer, and regular doorknob. Denise explained that her son was destructive and she had removed everything from his room as a precautionary measure. The bucket was for emergencies, and the nailed windows and prison-style lock were due to his obvious penchant for disappearing. Allegations the youngster had made against his mother and older brother were refuted by Carlos, who denied holding him down or punching him in the groin for discipline. Food was not withheld for punishment. He was never forced to do chores naked and locked up the rest of the time. According to Citrus County investigators, it was, quote, one of the worst cases of child abuse detectives have seen in a while. We are just so thankful that this boy trusted us enough to come forward about what was going on inside his home. Denise had been chronicling her son's behavior and emotional issues for 3 years in a journal that she says she offered police, but they weren't interested. Both boys were put in the custody of Child Services, but Carlos was returned to Denise. Her youngest son was placed into foster care, and as the state prepared a case against Denise, his behavior in his new home made it hard to make the allegations stick. Immediately, reports indicated that the boy threatened his new foster parents with abuse allegations of their own. This bombshell made prosecution against Denise moot, as the state didn't think a jury would convict once his actions were revealed. Criminal charges were never filed, and she had this to say when interviewed by local Fox 13.
Situations are not always what they seem. He is troubled. I had logged 3 years worth of behavior on my youngest son as trying to manage this and take notes. I offered that immediately on that day. That was also ignored. It's been a total of 5 months, and a nightmare for 5 months. I am a forever mom. Don't be quick to judge, and that's exactly what happened here.
Denise and teenaged Carlos tried to rebuild their lives and reputations. The case had made national and even international news, with headlines implying she was evil and guilty of enslaving children. Carlos had been implicated in the abuse as well. Having been fired following her arrest for child abuse, Denise now went to work at Liberty Middle School in Marion County. The Citrus Gazette reported that social media posts indicated that Carlos, who had told investigators that his youngest brother was a definite problem, wasn't happy that he had been taken from the family. His own behavioral issues began to manifest themselves more readily, and in January, February, and April of 2018, Denise had called 911, accusing Carlos of being aggressive and violently destroying their home and belongings. He too frequently ran away, spending